Good tidings, fellow friends of the world. It's Zeklo, and welcome to a speculation rant sort of thing about character connections. So, the thing with this particular topic is that there isn't a lot of evidence, and that's kind of the point. It's just supposed to be a nice little thought-stimulating video without worrying too much about tripping over every tiny detail. That'll probably still end up happening, since this is lore, but without further delay, let's hop right into it. Wilson. This is arguably the easiest one due to the amount of focus on them. Wilson's a scientist that seems to live away from typical society and is contacted by Maxwell through the Wagstaff radio. We know this. He ends up building the adventure portal with the forbidden knowledge, yada yada yada. Pretty straightforward. He happened to be one of the people that bought the radio and thus became a target given their secluded location and scientific aptitude. At least that's what it seems like. Apart from that, they don't really seem to share any familiarity with any other one before them. At least with what we currently know. But remember what we mentioned last video? There was a possibility of Wilson's cabin being Charlie's family cabin? Well, what could that mean? We don't really know if it's true, but it's another possible connection. That was mostly covered in the last video, so I'm not going to touch on it too much. Willow. Now, we're already going to get into the guessing game. But if skin concepts are a thing to go off of, then Orphan Willow gives us at least something to work with. Wendy had a funeral skin planned, and with Abigail's death, it seems natural for a funeral to take place in Wendy's past. This supports skins having some connection to characters' background. But nothing's for sure. It's a common theory that Willow was an orphan that either burned down their house, the orphanage, or both. Also, from some of their quotes, they were a part of the Girl Scouts. So, how in the world do we tie this back to Maxwell? The only thing that comes to mind is the Voxella factory burning down. Maxwell has a connection to Wagstaff, who we will get to later, and while indirect, it would be a connection. Perhaps Maxwell used Willow to start the fire. But that would seem to go against spreading the radios in the first place. If Willow was responsible on their own, then it could have interfered with Maxwell's plan, and thus taking them in as revenge. This is similar to what happened to Wolfgang. Before Maxwell had come across the Codex Umbra, he was a simple man, William Carter. Things didn't go their way, and a circus train crashed into the passenger train they were on. Well, Wolfgang was a part of the circus, and we know this due to a poster that speaks of a strongman. Maxwell holds onto this poster in his study, clearly being something he wishes to remember. And if you ask me, he's the kind of person to hold a grudge. Wendy. This one seems pretty solid. Based on the message from Jack, presumably Maxwell, aka William's brother, there is a mention of twins, likely Wendy and Abigail. In this context, it suggests that both Jack and William know of both a mother and twins. From this, we can assume it is a shared mother, and the twins are Jack's own. This would make Maxwell an uncle, and is supported by Wendy's quote, "I feel a strange kinship with him." This connection extends to Abigail being the other twin, and possibly having been killed during the 1906 San Francisco earthquake that appears to be caused by Maxwell's final act going wrong. WX-78. So, being mechanical, we have a few suspects for potential connections. Wilson, Wagstaff, Winona, and Weber's father. All of which have some experience with science, and mechanical whatchamacallits. There are two prominent ideas, those being they were simply made, and they are who made them. The last one sounds a bit funky, but take it like this. A person making themselves into a robot. This is supported by the fact a skeleton is visible when they are struck by lightning. Of course, the problem here is this works for other people in cases such as hair and skirts. Since Wilson had been a failed scientist until receiving forbidden knowledge, I find it unlikely that they played any part in their making. Especially because Wilson is kinda known to boast about their scientific achievements, and none of their quotes about WX really seem to do that. Winona's quotes also don't really seem to indicate any connection to the creation of WX-78, and Weber's father, well, not too much is really known about them. Wagstaff is of course a possibility, probably the best one. The naming system is even the same as the Voxella radio, a Voxela PR-76. 76. This is only 2 short of 78, and this could represent the number of inventions. Wagstaff is said to have disappeared during the factory fire. They don't say they found a body, meaning it is entirely possible they were taken by Maxwell. If this is the case, then they should still be present somewhere in the Don't Starve world. We have no reason to believe in permanent death nor escape. So they could have been made into a machine, WX-78. And I mean, let's just say Wagstaff got really hurt in the fire Darth Vader style. A mechanical body would be more than reasonable. And look pretty spiffy if you ask me, but more like elegant because that's what the skin drops are for the... Yeah, okay, moving on. Wicker Bottom. This is a fun one. And of course by that I mean I have literally no clue and I have no leads whatsoever. But no, seriously, I'm just gonna spitball kind of. So what we do know is they're a librarian. So what does a librarian have in common with Maxwell? Well, books. Particularly book. The Codex Umbra. Where did he get it? We don't know. But when he initially came across it, perhaps he tried to, check it for authenticity or whatever. I mean, it's this unknown ancient tome sort of thing. I mean, maybe he was just one of those people that's, kind of just took it for themselves and just whatever, but I'm just throwing ideas out. Maybe he went to, check it at a library to be like, what is this thing that I found? Now, that said, I don't really think a library is where one would do that, but I really have no leads at all, so... But I guess there is actually one quote that kind of interests me. You know the price of revival as well as I do. Wicker is very knowledgeable, not just in normal things, but magical things as well, and that's certainly something, because most people aren't really acquainted with magic. Oh boy, if you loved Wicker Bottoms, then you're gonna love Woody's. It's another guessing game. Kind of. Maxwell seems to know something about Lucy, who has a connection to Woody, given the quote, "Ah, how have you been, Lucy?" So that's something, I guess. Moving on. Wes. So initially I thought Wes was the one on the circus poster, but someone in the comments corrected me by saying that it was actually Wimpy Wolfgang. And given the shirt, I would believe it. So, if they don't have a connection to the circus, then what connection do they have? Well, he has an Eiffel Tower in his background portrait, and William Carter was from Europe, so perhaps someone from his past? You know, maybe a mime looked at him funny? Dunno. Wigfrid! Yet another guessing game. Wow, what a surprise there. Their quotes don't really seem to be any help, particularly because they're kind of acting. There are some quotes where they're not, but they don't really help either. So, they're a stage performer, pretty much, so because of that, perhaps they knew Maxwell through their own performances. Or actually, more likely, is perhaps they were a candidate for Maxwell's ad. Because Maxwell's ad, looking to hire a lady assistant for a magician's show. Previous experience unnecessary, but should have a curious demeanor and a keen interest in the mysteries of the universe. Must provide own costume. Well, Wigfrid is female. They're, a stage performer, so they probably maybe have experience. Curious demeanor and keen interest in the mysteries of the universe. That seems kind of eccentric lines. Wigfrid might dig that, assuming that they're actual personalities like that. Must provide own costume. They could definitely do that. They can craft spears and helmets, so they can probably make some props like that. Seems to fit the bill pretty well, but who knows? Webber! Also difficult to pin down, but at least they have some bits that allow for theories. That being the previously mentioned father, which some of you might not even be aware of. Father used to work on something like that, when examining an alchemy machine. Well, Maxwell has a habit of getting involved with scientific people for whatever reason. Wilson and Wagstaff are proof of that. So if Maxwell decided to get involved with said father, there would be an indirect connection to Weber, being the son. Say, if Wagstaff is Weber's father, they are an inventor. That would be all kinds of weird, though, considering what we said about WX-78. But also kind of comical, The both would be in plain sight to one another, but neither able to recognize each other, one being a robot and one having been eaten by a spider. Which, speaking of, is kind of interesting. The spider is a Don't Starve spider, right? So, how did he get eaten in the real world? Forget that question. Maybe that's not the actual question we need to be asking. Take this line. That jerk tricked us. He is referring to Maxwell. But get this. The us part. He's referring to him and the spider, right? He does that, but what if he isn't? What if he's referring to himself and his father? He's used I in his quotes before, so he doesn't solely acknowledge himself and the spider together. Like I said, the spider is from the Don't Starve world. It isn't a question of how he got eaten in the real world, because he wasn't. Him and his father were tricked, and then he got sent to the Don't Starve world where he met his fate. Now that's just a theory, but I think it puts a new spin on things that I haven't really seen mentioned much before. So we're done now then, huh? No, we're not. We have Winona. Now, Winona's not technically canon yet. They were just found in the files and then removed, but their speech files had lots of stuff. And it seems to suggest that they are Charlie's sister, because 1, they mention a younger sister, 2, they had a perk regarding avoiding Charlie's attacks, and 3, because they know Charlie's pet name for Maxwell, Maxie. They also seem to have worked for Wagstaff, which is another connection. But overall, we don't know what's canon because they're not in the game yet. We don't know if they will be in the game. I mean, they had a whole-blown speech file. That's a lot to not be in the game. I mean, they've done more, probably, like art and stuff. But Don't Starve Together's not done updating. They still have stuff planned. We just gotta wait. We just gotta watch. Winona might be one of them. Then maybe all this will actually mean something. Anyway. Now we're done. Nope, caught you off guard. Ha ha ha! We gotta do the Beefalo Trader. So, yeah, they count. So I'm sure a lot of you don't even know who that is, because who even uses the trade-in, am I right? Anyway, they have some interesting lines, one of which describes a boss. I've always been a loner me. The boss mostly lets me alone, which suits me fine. A commented out line in the code says, Old West Fur Trader, which makes me skeptical about their place in the lore, but we'll roll with it. They have an accent. They have a boss. Now, strangely enough, the first person to come to mind is Witherstone's loan collector. Witherstone being someone William owed money to. Now, that's a really, 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 really discreet character. Of a discreet character. But that's just the first thing that comes to mind. The other person that comes to mind would actually be Jack. And that's due to their eyes. Like I said, Jack seems to be the father of Wendy. Wendy has these white eyes. I don't know. I think that's a more common theory than the other one. Anyway, that's just me blabbing. Speculation. So that is, in fact, all we're going to cover for this video. So it's a bit different from my other videos. Probably more speculation than the other ones. You know. Not as much facts. There's not much to go off of. But I did my best. So I hope you enjoyed it all the same. So I'd like to hear your ideas on what the characters' connections are to one another. Now, I'm sure some of you are thinking like, oh my goodness, they don't all have to be connected. What are you going on about? That's completely fair. I can completely understand that point of view. And if that's what you think, fair enough. But either way, I'd like to hear your thoughts, your theories, your whatever. So thank you all for tuning in, and farewells.